Hello everybody, good morning, it's lovely to see you all, and I'm looking forward to just sharing one of my favourite stories with you this morning. It's by a pastor called Max Lucado, and he writes lots of children's stories, but one of my favourite is called Because I Love You, and it's about a little boy called Paladin, and I'll tell you the story, I don't want to spoil it too much. Long ago, in a land far away, you have ever seen, there lived a man, a very wise man, called Shaddai. Shaddai was a big man with a very tender heart. He had bright blue eyes and a big thick beard, and when he laughed, his cheeks would lift like two big half moons. And when he sang, which he often did, everything stopped to listen. Tall trees would bend, and squirrels and butterflies and birds would pause. Even the children would turn when they heard his voice. And as well they should, because it was for them that he sang. And for the children, Shaddai had built a wonderful village. It was more than any child could dream. There was a sky blue pond, and the children swung from the apple branches and splashed and laughed. They scampered through the meadows and giggled in the orchards. The sun never seemed to set too early, and the cool night always brought a quiet peace. But most of all, Shaddai was always near to them. When Shaddai wasn't in the meadow, he was in his workshop, and he was a carpenter. And the children loved to watch him make a table out of a log or make a chair out of a tree. They would gather round him, and they would take turns pressing their little hands against his great big hand. Every night he would gather the children on the grassy meadow and tell them stories. Fascinated, the children would listen as long as Shaddai or their weary eyes would allow them. Oh, the children just loved Shaddai, and Shaddai just loved the children, and he knew each one of them by name. He knew Lucy, and she loved birds. He knew Roland and his fear of darkness. He knew Daphne was friendly, and that Spencer was a little bit shy. He also knew that Paladin was curious. When one of them called his name, he dropped whatever he was doing and he turned, and his giant heart had 100 strings, each held by a different child, and Shaddai loved every single child the same. And that is why he built the wall. The wall was a high stone fence surrounding the village. Shaddai had built it rock upon rock. It was so tall and high above Shaddai, even if he stretched out his huge arms, he couldn't reach the top of the wall. He spent days building it, and as he built, he didn't sing. A deadly forest stood outside the village. As Shaddai built the fence, he would often pause and look into the shadows beyond. Cruel thorns and savage beasts and hidden pits filled the dark forest. It was no place for children, the children that Shaddai loved. Beyond the wall is danger, he would tell the children in solemn tones. You were made for my village, not for that terrible land beyond. You need to stay here with me. It's safe. But in his heart, he knew it was only a matter of time. The day he placed the final stone on the wall, he returned to his shop, and he took a large branch. He sat down at his bench and carved a staff. Shaddai stood the staff in the corner. I'll be ready, he told himself. Sometime later, a boy ran into Shaddai's workshop, hit with a child with searching eyes and boundless energy. And he brought the maker both concern and joy. Shaddai? In one motion, the maker dropped his hammer and turned. What is it, Paladin? The boy spoke in spurts as he gasped for air. The wall! I found it! I found a hole! It's a big opening! Ooh! The boy's hand stretched to show the size of the hole. Somebody could crawl through this, he said. Shaddai pulled over a stool and sat down. Do you know, Paladin, I knew it would be you that found it. Tell me, how did you? Well, I was walking along the wall searching for holes. Paladin paused, surprised that Shaddai knew. Yes, I was looking for holes. So you could see out in the forest? Well, I was curious, Shaddai. I wanted to know why you won't let us go out there. Why is it so bad? Shaddai motioned for the boy to come to him. When Paladin came near, the Maker cupped the small face in his hands and he lifted it so the boy could look directly into his face. The urgency of the look caused Paladin's stomach to feel empty. Paladin didn't really understand. He felt very uncomfortable. He turned to leave and he needed to think about what Shaddai had said. As he entered the twilight, he looked back into the shop. There sat Shaddai, leaning backwards, still watching him. Paladin was confused. Well, part of him wanted to stay in the safety of Shaddai's shop, while another part of him drew him towards the fence. He looked again into the shop. Shaddai was standing now, not moving, but standing, his large hand stretched out to the door. Paladin turned quickly as if he hadn't seen anything, and he walked as fast as he could, aimlessly at first, and then purposely towards the fence. I won't go too near, he told himself. I'll just peek out. Questions came as quickly as his steps. Why do I want to do what Shaddai doesn't want me to do? Why am I so curious? Is it so wrong to want to see beyond the fence? By now Paladin was at the hole, and without stopping to think, he lay on his stomach and squirmed through just far enough to stick his head through the other side. I think I'll just take a quick look, he told himself. What could be wrong with that? Shaddai said he'd made the hole because he loved us. I wonder what he's keeping from me. As if his knees were moving on their own, Paladin crawled farther, and soon he was through the hole on the outside of the wall. He rose slowly to his feet. For several moments he didn't move, and wondered if something was going to come out of the trees to scare him. Nothing did. He relaxed his shoulders and sighed. It's not so bad, he said aloud. I wonder what Shaddai was worried about. Paladin began to walk into the forest. Twigs snapped between his bare feet. Sweet flowers scented the air. Well, I don't see any scary creatures, he thought. The trees were so thick he could barely see the sky. Just a few steps into the wood, he said aloud. I'm just going to go and see what it's like. After a dozen or so more steps, he stopped. He liked the wilderness. There was nothing to fear here. For the first time in his young life, he believed that Shaddai was wrong. Just wait till I tell the others, he thought, and he turned to go back through the hole. But the hole was gone. He stopped and he stared. He only saw a solid wall. Paladin ran to the wall. Was this the spot where he'd crawled through, or was it somewhere else? He couldn't remember. He ran a dozen steps one way and then a dozen steps the other. Nothing. Then suddenly he heard a strange sound in the woods behind him. He swung round, but he saw nothing. Paladin looked into the forest. He no longer felt friendly. It was dark and it was threatening, as if it were about to destroy him. Desperately, Paladin searched the wall. He couldn't climb over. He couldn't break through. There was no way home. If you leave here, you will not find the way back. Shaddai's words came into his mind. The boy's eyes were wide with fear. He sat on the ground and hugged his knees to his chest and he began to cry. As Paladin huddled there, lonely and afraid, he remembered something else Shaddai had often said. I love you so much. Does he love me enough to come and find me, wondered the boy. Will he hear me if I call to him? Shaddai! Shaddai! I'm sorry, I didn't listen to you. Please come and help me. Paladin's plea had been heard by the one who loved him, even before it had been spoken. For as the boy left Shaddai's workshops, the Maker had watched him as long as he could. When Paladin was out of sight, Shaddai turned, not to take up his work, but to take off his apron. He hung his tools on the wall, then he reached into the corner and he took the staff, the one he had carved after he had finished building the wall. Even before Paladin had reached the wall, Shaddai had left the shop. Even before Paladin had asked for help, Shaddai was on the way to give it. Even before the hole in the wall had closed, Shaddai had opened another one. His strong hands pulled away the rocks until he could see into the forest. With his staff at his side, Shaddai crawled through the hole. He left the village he'd made, and he set out in search of his child. Do you know what? Thank you so much for letting me share this story with you today. It is, as I said, it's one of my favourite stories. I just don't want you to forget how much God loves you. And his love for you and for me is just so vast and is so great. Just like Shaddai in the story with Paladin. You know what? Paladin messed up. He disobeyed. He did the wrong thing. He made the wrong choices. But Shaddai already had a plan to bring him home and to bring him back. And I want you to remember, you know, and we do mess up. I mess up, you mess up, we all mess up. We all do stuff that we're ashamed of and we wish we'd never done. And we'd never made those choices. But the fact is we do make those choices, don't we? And I want you to know that you can never do anything so bad that you can't be forgiven by God. Because his love is just so vast and there's just so much of it. It never runs out. And all he asks is for us just to come to him and to tell him that we're sorry and to ask him to help us not to do it again. And you know what? He will. And even if you've messed up even right now, God is already making a way, making a plan for you to get right with him again. And isn't that good news? Because as Christians, we believe in Jesus. And the plan really has already been made. It's already been done. It's already been finished. If we put our trust in Jesus and we believe that when we say sorry and we ask him to take away all those bad things that we've done and said and thought, you know, it's done. And we've got a fresh start again. And I just think that's an amazing, amazing thing to know. And that's what makes us Christians. Makes you Christians, makes me Christian. That we believe in Jesus, we believe in God, and we believe that by the Holy Spirit, by the power that God gives us, that we can live that life. That's a life that's full of joy, and a life that's full of forgiveness, and a life that's full of love, a life that can just be a wonderful life. Isn't that great that we can have that? And we can share it with our friends too. So I thank you very much again for letting me share this with you. And just have a great day. Bye.